Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. You're here with the Networking Insiders and the Order team. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're seeing a lot of people just get through the gates right now. And just for today's session, a few call outs. This is a live session. And so if you'd like to ask any questions of the panelists, there is a Q&A within the WebEx app. So please use the Q&A if possible, because we have threading so we can more directly respond to your questions there. And yeah, I guess let's just kind of get into it. So again, welcome. Today is April 14th, and this is the Networking Insiders monthly webinar series. Today we have a special guest Order with us, and we're going to be talking about two different technology innovations. On the Cisco side, we're going to be talking about the first ever cloud delivered fabric on our switching platform. And so we're really excited about that. And then our Order team is going to be talking about AI endpoint identification and security. So we think that both of these are going to allow you all to kind of gain some knowledge on how we can rapidly scale our networks and better segment our networks, as well as better classify devices in an ongoing fashion. And our cast here today, we have myself, Jeffrey Gelino. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. on the East Coast, and I've been with Cisco for about 13 years. My compadre here, Nico Darrow, he is our cloud fabric expert. He is on the Cisco Catalyst switching product management team. And I'm pretty sure he has personally built this fabric solution that he's going to be showing off today. So really excited to get this directly from the source. On our ecosystem partner side, we have Steve Stark, who is the VP of Channels from Order, and then their expert, Craig Hips. Craig is a fellow over at Order, and he's going to pick up at the bottom of the hour and talk about their platform. And so just kind of going through the agenda of what we're going to do today. So you're here, you're being welcomed, happy to have you. I'm going to cover quickly just some Cloud Fabric do's and don'ts, where we want to use Cloud Fabric and what are some great ideal use cases for it. Then we're going to dive into a deep dive into Cloud Fabric delivered by our friend Nico. And then the second half of this, we are going to go through AI endpoint security with the Order team. And so fabrics in the Cisco world, or even in the cloud world, it's nothing new. And we've actually been delivering cloud fabrics for some time as an overlay with our wireless technologies. The first fabrics that we were delivering used our MR access points in the MX security appliance. And we were able to do per tunnel IPsec overlays to securely transport traffic from your access layer of your network to a security anchor, pretty much located anywhere in your environment. This IPsec encapsulation was ideal for guest and BYOD use cases, so we could extend those user networks anywhere. And more recently on the cloud wireless side, we released the Meraki Campus Gateway. I should say MCG. Well, I'll have to fix that. So this is a wireless and gateway solution, and it allows us to seamlessly deliver user VLANs from this gateway out to any wireless access point in your network. So again, it gave us some really nice ability to form an overlay for scaling our wireless designs. We didn't use IPsec for the MCG. We actually used QUIC for the management plane and VXLAN for the data plane. And this allows us to be very efficient and get some additional speed and scalability with that overlay. And this is ideal for large campus mobility. If you want to take an on-prem controller solution and move it to the cloud, the Campus Gateway really eases that transition. And then what is really the innovation that we're here to highlight today on the Cisco Cloud side is our wired cloud fabric. And this is doing fabric over MS devices or switch devices. And so there is some limitations in terms of hardware scope here. This is going to be aligned with the 9K hardware family, including the 9300, 9300X, and the new 9350 Smart Switch family. And there's some really nice benefits that we can get from this around campus scalability using the BGP EVPN overlay, as well as provide some nice macro segmentation with the VRFs. So this is an ideal technology for our large campus sites or to allow us to scale efficiently without the typical constraints of a broadcast domain. And that's all I really want to talk about with fabrics because I have the expert here, and I already feel Nico is just ready to jump in and drop some more knowledge on us. So Nico, please take it away.
Jeff, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so let's talk about fabrics, right? And it's definitely more than just a buzzword. And coming from the Meraki mentality of that, taking those complex technologies, making them simple and easy to consume, what are we actually solving? Like, what is the problem at hand? And that's usually where people talk about fabrics, but you really need to step back and figure out what are you getting out of it. And part of it is already addressed by a lot of our cloud technologies. Management sprawl, very easy to manage via cloud. What we really need to address, though, is those scenarios where we need that little bit extra mobility. We need to start moving to that pure layer 3 play. And traditionally, going layer 3 is incredibly difficult. There's always going to be some reason or some feature, some vendor, some requirement to have layer 2 adjacency. We do want to, migrate away from some older protocols that could cause, scale issues on the network or just, headaches, things like spanning tree. We kind of want to age out those architectures or technologies, but it becomes very difficult because we still have some dependencies. And this is where Fabric really makes a great fit because it allows you to bridge that gap where between a purely layer 3 managed by yourself or DIY play, there's a lot of hand crafting of taking the subnets and dividing them up, and it's becomes very complex and very difficult to manage, right? The problem with layer 3 is that you need layer 3 routes and subnets, and it's very hard to dynamically adjust it in the environment, and that's where fabrics come into play. It gives you that ability to get the simplicity of configuration, right? If you want to think of how we're building fabrics in the cloud, you think of it as a fabric instance, and that's not just a way of configuring switches, but it's the single source of truth, right? I love to say that with cloud, right, Meraki dashboard, there is no other way to configure a switch, so it has to work through dashboard. So the idea is how can we define that software defined network we always talk about, like be able to define that fabric in the environment, and then just add hardware, right? We know what we want. We have the best hardware in the environment, or in the market, right? And then we can configure it the way we want to, right? And this is a great example of how we've been evolving as a customer, as a company, to address the needs of our customers, right? Being able to take these multiple technologies, and leverage them against with the same hardware, so you're not getting penalized for going cloud or on-prem. We have a lot of customers that are doing both at the same time. So how do we now take that single, security policy or that architectural model and roll it across our entire enterprise and deployment, right? Both large campus, small branch, and without having to have two separate or manage two separate technologies. And that's where fabrics come into play. And up here, just giving an example of what fabrics we have now. Cloud Fabric is not the first fabric Cisco has developed, right? It is just one of the latest ones that we've implemented via cloud. And it's a great example, a testament to what we've been able to achieve with Catalyst in the cloud, right? When we first began, we had a container-based architecture where we essentially ran a small Meraki container on the switch to kind of configure it. Now with our iOS XE Cloud native capabilities, we're able to configure those switches directly from the cloud, full feature set, leverage all the capabilities of that switch, 40,000 plus, netconf Yang models accessible to us via cloud orchestration, right? It's very powerful. And we went from just a simple, hey, we now have Catalyst in the cloud to, oh, by the way, 4 months later, we built Fabric, right? And not just anything, or not just with um, you know, uh, uh, very simple fabric. We're leveraging the actual, CVDs of our customers that are leveraging EVPN fabrics today. Some of the biggest of the big, can't really drop names, but we're leveraging those architectures that we've built and tempered with our customers in the field, right? And being able to orchestrate it simply via cloud that's where it really has that perfect marriage of the best of breed technology architecture with the cloud orchestration. but not just that, but you can pick and choose and do all of them, right? And that's really what I want to kind of lead with, or leave this slide with, is just, we have many different ways, right? Start with a cloud fabric. If you want more capabilities, we have on-prem SDA Lisp. We do have inroads to integrate them together, or at least be able to bridge them very easily, including our, data center fabrics as well, right? So definitely a great path to cloud, as well as support for on-prem as well, and all both under the same umbrella of Cisco. So a lot of really exciting things. But today I really want to talk about cloud fabric specifically, right? So talked about the high level fabric. It's really about getting that freedom of configuration simplicity. This is the way we kind of want to configure networks, right? We want to be able to say, hey, I've got 13 buildings across a large campus. I just want one big /20 subnet, right? That's usually like networking admin mistakes day 101, 101. But this is something you can do with Fabric. So big, large subnets, sprawling across multiple buildings. Is it a problem? No, there's no layer 2 spanning tree. It's all layer 3. It's EVPN, BGP peered, so very efficient. And that's great, but we also want to make it easy to secure as well, right? So we start talking about very large subnets, and now like all the security guys are like, they have little alarms going off in their heads, right? Because you're like, okay, well, now we've got the inverse of the problem. We're too connected, right? Now everyone's on the same subnet. We need more segmentation, more VRFs, right? Well, that's not the way we're approaching it. And this is just a great example of how we're able to take some of the best of breed feature sets from Cisco, like a lot of that pedigree that's been built with TrustSec over the years. We're able to take that and implement it with adaptive policy. Our basically implementation of TrustSec with SGT tags, segmentation, microsegmentation, couple that with Fabric, EVPN, BGP built in, right? It can do it in its sleep, and you kind of tie this all together in our Fabric, and you can start to see how we differentiate ourselves in the market. We're not just like remote configuration management, right, for these devices where you're pushing out CLI config. We're pushing the best recommended Fabric, Cloud Fabric CVD architecture design for this network, and it's you have all the tool set as well to manage it, right? From AI assistant, which you'll start seeing a lot of great stuff leading up to and including Cisco Live, where the AI assistant now is aware of a lot of the fabrics and some of the assurance capabilities of that fabric. So being able to diagnose stuff, troubleshoot, is becoming incredibly fast. Being able to deploy changes to a fabric across very large locations with rollback, it's pretty powerful. But more importantly, being able to secure it, right? And that's what I did this demo where, we've had adaptive policy for a while. We just added this adaptive policy matrix where we can go in through dashboard and visually see the SGT relationships, like what is blocked, what is allowed, what has microsegmentation on it, right? And this is a way of looking at your security policy across your enterprise without ever having to see a subnet, right? I can't tell you how many times that after the 30 or 40th subnet, you start forgetting which one was your LAN management, the other one was your vendor A, right? This all kind of simplifies that down to the class of device. Like, okay, vendor A is not allowed to talk to vendor B. Guest can talk to nobody but the internet, right? But that policy is enforced, and then as we turn on Fabric, you can see how it naturally progresses into that support as well, where now we have that segmentation, the same segmentation security policy that we've implemented via adaptive policy, but it's also enforced and capability is supported over Fabric. So now we have these abilities to do very large subnets, but also to have that same segmentation east-west at line rate with no performance impact to the end user, alleviating the need to hairpin traffic through firewalls, where we're starting to see that become more of a thing now, where we need to do full security. Well, the whole point was, security is built into the network. That way we don't have to overload those firewalls. Or now with a Fabric, we actually have additional resiliency. It's not just about simplicity of configuration and scale, but the resiliency, being able to have a subnet or a fabric and have multiple peers, having a peer with your two DCs, a third party vendor, it doesn't matter. You just add peers to it. it'll find the right path, right? Having that intelligence built in gives you that resiliency, and it kind of leads us into that vision of where we see the overall switching infrastructure going forward, right? And where we are today, right? So this is a great, just putting a pin in the road, right? Where you see here in the middle, 17.18.2, we released in December of last year as GA. And of course, GA is production level code, but it isn't a gold star release candidate yet because we do want to add a couple more features yet, right? And this is a great example of a feature that is ever evolving in Meraki, right? Because we come out with multiple phases. The first phase is standard campus fabric. We are going to support EVPN multi-homing, which I'll talk about here shortly with 26 firmware here in August. So that's going to be an iterative step, but you can see how we're going to quickly roll out feature sets across this fabric to be able to go from a distribution level fabric where we are today to a full-on routed access, layer 3 at the edge fabric. But when you start deploying this, right, you want to take a look at the entire, not just the large campus or the incredibly large multi-site, right? But also look at the smaller branch, making sure that the policies that we're going to enforce with adaptive policy is also enforced with or at these smaller branch locations with adaptive policy. You don't need fabric there, but the same policy that you created can be enforced and synced there. And this also works in dashboard with Access Manager, which is our cloud radius security solution, but it works better with ICE as well. So it's a great way to do it at a small scale. You can do a standalone security segmentation or secure fabric, right? You can start getting a little bit larger with a access manager where it can scale up to a few, quite a few more devices. And then of course, ICE being the ultimate deployment model, but you have the ability to grow into a much larger solution that scales with your need, right? And I'll demo that here for you shortly. But a couple things I want to mention, right? What we're also coming out with, what we released for GA is distribution level fabric, which means that the fabric begins and ends at the distribution level. In this example here, you're going to see some downstream access level switches. Those are just traditional layer 2 switches connected to the northbound, think of it like a core, right? Or distribution core. And that's a LACP aggregation port, right? So fabric is going to start there. So this is a way of being able to distribute like a guest or vendor segment. And this is just for initial scale testing as we grow or as we get into 26 firmware later this year with around August. We'll support fabric to the access edge. And it's mainly just a scale and testing, right? It can work today, but we kind of want to only support what we can test, right? Because there's a lot we're kind of adding. Multi-role is supported. So you can see here that in this scenario, we're collapsing both the border and spine into one device where the leaf can be a stack, right? This is a more common distribution versus a full broken out fabric, right? So this is a more common, and of course we're going to be adding border leaf mode as well with the 26. And I've got a better slide that shows the roadmap that'll kind of highlight this a little bit better. But the biggest feature we're adding with 26 is this EVPN multi-homing. This is something that we've lost capability with the sunsetting of the MS400 series classic switches, where you could do front side switching or front side stacking, I apologize, where you could have, or traditionally some customers would have two MDFs, maybe one side of the airport or the other, right? And then they're basically stacked across those two geographically redundant locations, and those are aggregated somewhere downstream, right? So we lost that capability with Catalyst. Only being able to do it with a 9500 with Stackwise Virtual SVL, right, was our closest feature set from that. What EVPN multi-homing is the ability to do essentially layer 3 stacking, much like SVL, but with BGP EVPN underpinnings that allow us to do not just active standby, but active. So this gives us a lot more capability for resiliency right? So keep in mind, Fabric is not just about subnets, right? Because you can deploy a Fabric just for high availability, right? Because once you have a network in the Fabric or subnet in the Fabric, it's a lot easier to keep that in a hitless state, right? Especially with multiple resiliency counterpoints, right? But here, with EVPN multi-homing, you would have an active scenario, and what we want to be able to do is, upgrade switch one, wait an hour or two, then upgrade switch two. That way, you're never losing connectivity, and this is going to make a lot of, this is what a lot of our customers have been asking for that have things like hospitals and mission critical environments. Really, a lot of networks are mission critical today. So yeah, so this is just a quick overview of how we where we are today. 17.18.2 is out. You can go test it, deploy it today. 26.1 is right around the corner. We have it in beta here shortly, but the goal is to have that for August. That brings that EVP and multi-homing, as well as some other capabilities. But keep in mind, hardware support. We are going to permit configurability on pretty much all catalysts that will support it, to the best of our ability, right? This is like, in production, we are supporting 9500Hs, which are the newer 9500s, as well as the 9300Xs. This is just to keep our maximum scale recommendations out there. That being said, if you have a lab environment, if you want to test this, if you want to play with this will work on an MS390, right? 9300L. These switches have the capability, but we just haven't tested them officially. So keep in mind, for production use, 9500H, 9300X, we are going to be adding more platforms as fully supported as we go on, right? It's just mainly a resource thing at this time. But very exciting times. We've got a lot of roadmaps for additional features and functionalities. But just to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, right? If you can kind of see my screen, hopefully, and it just timed out, which is awesome. So give me a second. Always on a live demo, right?
Classic live demo, Nico. Classic.
I had it ready, but it timed out. All right, so this is you guys can follow along at home. So Fabric, right? So you can see here that Fabrics are built at an organization level, right? So the idea is we're going to be able to support a Fabric. Fabric supports up to about 10,000 devices, clients, right? And of course, we're also going to be supporting multi-cluster Fabrics where you can basically chain multiple of them together to kind of get that horizontal scaling. But this is the first iteration, obviously, right? Fabric side A, so this is just a Fabric instance where you can look at the devices that are currently in the Fabric. It gives you all the information about the Fabric subnets, the type of subnets, eBGP peers, for the multiple borders, device roles, Fabric summary, right? And this is just an overview of the whole Fabric at that location. What's really great is this access manager. I'm just going to use this, or sorry, let me do the Fabric. So the one thing with Access Manager, right, it's a great way to demo security in the cloud, right? Because it's built in. You've got functionality where we can go in and dynamically map, .1x clients on switch ports to specific adaptive policy domains. So going back to we are not just building a fabric or cloud fabric, it's a secure cloud fabric, right? So you can see here where we can, have a rule that will match a client, map them to a fabric VLAN, adaptive policy, right? And then adaptive policy, that's where we can go in at the org level and look at all those policies, right? So you can see here that developers can talk to development servers, but they can't talk to guests, right? So great way of being able to quickly troubleshoot connectivity problems, visibility, right? Everything that you're accustomed to use in dashboard today, right? From the troubleshooting, packet captures, right? This is something we added recently, intelligent packet capture, that not just helps you do a remote distributed packet capture, but does the analysis for you. I'm not going to do the full capture right now, I'm just going to jump into one that's been previously stored, right? But the idea is, instead of just helping you capture it, let's figure out what's going on in that report, in that capture. So I can capture a fabric, capture a fabric, instance or some problem that's going on in the environment. I can go down, take a look at it. We've got filters for fabric, VXLAN over here. So I can look at it in detail, right? And then share it with, so all the tooling, client visibility, analytics, are all built in that are supported, not just what you know of already, but all the extra stuff that comes with Fabric as well, right? So end-to-end visibility, application visibility of this device as it traverses the fabric, as well as all the tooling needed to kind of configure it and troubleshoot it. So, just last thing to show you, we're not just, taking a lot of this complexity and putting it in a dashboard. I think that's what everybody wants us to do, right? But it's like, okay, great. There's still a lot of people out there that are CCIEs, or they just really want to get in and pop the hood, look under the, look at the engine kind of thing, right? So, it's very easy to go in and see how things are configured, but for that extra step, right, you can jump into terminal, you could look at, port configuration, you could look at a lot of the tooling that you may use to troubleshoot a live environment. Of course, it's lazy. Hold on, here you go. Go. Read only mode. All right, let's go to leaf 3. Lucky number 3. Swore this worked like not too long ago. But anyway, so you can go in here, you can do a show NVE peers, you can take a look at the fabric, troubleshooting tool set that you have, show IBBGP summary. So a lot of those tools that exist, here you go. It just took a little while, right? So you can do show NVE peers. So you can see, you can do live view, show run, and 10.101. So you've got, all the same CLI commands that you may be familiar with, but also like all the automation in dashboard as well. And be able to see the configuration as well. So everything's there. As we simplify and automate dashboard and fabric and dashboard, we also don't want to lose a lot of that refinement and capabilities that people have built with the product over time, right? So when you, as a customer of Cisco, pick a Catalyst, you're picking the right hardware. And now it's all about how do you want to deploy it on-prem, SDA, cloud fabric, right? The options out there, you can convert either way. And of course, as our integrations and our dashboards get closer together, you can see those workflows become a lot more simple, right? Especially when you start looking at things with AI assistant, be able to do workflow, to do configurations across multiple platforms, it becomes super easy. So that being said, Jeff, I think that's all I had, unless there's any other questions.
No, looked awesome, Nico. Thank you so much. And kind of a high level, what I heard is, fabrics make it simple, fabrics help us scale, and fabrics can also improve our network resiliency. So really like that. Who doesn't want to make a more scalable network that we can more easily deploy? And I also really appreciated your call out that we're continuing to use SGTs and adaptive policy for microsegmentation over the fabric. And as we get into segmentation, that's really for endpoint security and assurance. And that is exactly why we brought the Order team here today. So Steve, Craig, thank you both so much for joining. And I know that you both have some material and the demo for us here today. So let me hand the ball over to you two.
Thank you. Great presentation. Really appreciate it and glad to be here. So we're going to talk about one thing that I think flummoxes everybody, and that's unmanaged devices. And that's kind of the root of what we do is go out and find those. And for a little bit of context, it's estimated that over 40% of the devices on an organization's network are unmanaged. That means you can't put an agent on them. That means you can't put EDR on them. You can't put AV on them. But because we've done such a great job from an IT standpoint in shutting down attack vectors in IT, this is the new frontier. And this is where a lot of people are going after networks and trying to get in so that they can move laterally and do bad stuff. And so this is a really high risk area, and we're very happy to be working in conjunction with Cisco to provide great protection for this. So Craig, if you'd go to the next slide, that'd be great. So I'm going to use a use case real quick. This is for a hospital university. This could be transportation, like an airline. This could be a grocery store. This could be manufacturing. This could be anybody that's got IoT or IOMT devices. And really the issue is, in this case, they have a Cisco solution. They have ICE, but they've got a lot of devices that weren't being picked up correctly and couldn't be enforced from a policy standpoint. And so the reason that we are now in there with them is this is a very complex infrastructure, and they now have visibility into all of the assets, and they're able to incorporate those into the policies. And there's a lot of regulatory pressure, not only from a healthcare standpoint, but also when we talk transportation, TSA is another great example. There's SOX, there's PCI, there's all kinds of stuff. And if you want to get to a zero trust mandate, you've got to be able to look at all the devices on the network, and that's really what we provide. So Craig, if you'd go to the next slide, that'd be great. So in this case, why did it fit? Well, Cisco has the enforcement engines, had SDA in place, ICE in place, also the infrastructure and great portfolio breadth. We brought the AI discovery of every device, even the ones that didn't have an agent on there. And we're providing a ton of context on those devices. So attributes that are really important to putting them in right groups and enforcing policy. The other thing we look at is anomaly detection. So a lot of stuff we're seeing on the network from a flow standpoint goes into protecting that environment. And then we work very closely, and Craig will talk about this. Craig spent a long time at Cisco in the ICE group, and we have developed a solution that integrates very well with ICE to make sure that you can micro segment the way that you want to get it done. So one more slide, and then I think it's on to you, Craig. But here's what happened, right? This customer got total visibility, over 120,000 devices. We have a customer that has 1.8 million devices under management with us. That's a massive amount. And if you figure that 40 to 50% of those are unmanaged, that is a huge risk. So we were able to reduce that risk. And then we're getting to that zero trust. So a lot of great things that we can do at a high level. I'm going to turn it over to Craig. Craig's going to talk about how we do it, because there's a lot of great special sauce in here. So Craig, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. So a lot of times when we provide, we show what's possible with the Order platform, there's always the question of, well, where's the secret sauce? And one of the key things is that Order can integrate directly with the Cisco infrastructure to passively be able to analyze all the communications and dissect the critical components that will actually provide that rich metadata, which feeds our AI classification engine. So we start with, just basically passive monitoring, no agents, and we're going to infuse that information with not just the AI intelligence, but data that's collected from the network. So being able to pull data from things like, Cisco Meraki, Catalyst Center, directly from the switches, and be able to also pull in threat intelligence, as well as information from many integrations I'll talk about, to be able to come up with a 360 view on every endpoint, so that not just getting advanced classification, but what's the context around it, what's the behavior of those devices, and what's the risk and threats, so that we can really feed that back into things like Cisco ICE, the firepower solution, into asset management and vol management, your SIM solutions like Splunk, to be able to proactively and reactively provide segmentation of these devices. And some of that, additional Cisco embedded intelligence includes things like Talos. It include something that we have been extremely successful, which is an agentless approach for organizations that may have, could be a medical workstations or other devices which do not support another client, basically being able to collect the data locally and feed that into the system to provide advanced hardware, software, and other analysis for every connected endpoint. And we'll get into some of these deep Cisco integrations. Just a big picture of what some of those integrations are. So you're seeing on the left hand side, deep integrations with the Cisco infrastructure, switches, wireless, VPN, including something, our embedded data collection engine on the Cat9K systems, being able to pull data and feed it back into systems like Meraki, Spaces, the Firepower solution, ICE, SDA, Catalyst Center. For those customers who are still in the transition process of Prime, we are complementary. While sometimes there might be something that sounds like it's an overlap, we are extremely complementary to the Cisco solution. And that's why many customers have really looked to us to feed the asset and endpoint intelligence, as well as the insights into how to properly optimize segmentation. So want to move on and say, beyond the many integrations that continue to grow with the Cisco portfolio, this is also backed up with other information that that you may have. Maybe it's your IP address management, something in AD or Azure or ServiceNow or an HTM database. What does my vol management system know about this system? What do my EDR MDM solutions know? Being able to aggregate, deduplicate that at scale so that you have consolidated results, which ultimately feed into not just visibility. So a lot of times people say, oh, you do a great job at classification. That is true. And here's just a simple one screenshot, because there's many, because you actually see data that we're pulling in from things like ICE, Prime, DNA Center, Meraki, ServiceNow, vol management. But coming up with this consolidated result, it's more than just saying, hey, I think this is a building automation or facility device. It's having the right context around certainly details around make, model, and operating system, but also what is the risk assessment for this device at multiple vectors? How's it connected to my network? Where was it last seen? What are some of those business functions that really help transcend just network specifics or classification, which is, how is this device being used? Who manages this device? How is it being used within the organization? And that really is what's going to be fundamental for all segmentation decisions in the network, because it's not just enough to say, hey, this device was authenticated to the system, but what is the context around that, including things like, now that we know things like make and model and operating system, we can auto correlate that to vulnerabilities. What is the ICS and other manufacturing, FDA and other recall systems say about that specific operating system? Confirm it with the vol management system or through embedded data collection. Like I said, the order software inventory collector. We're watching the communications and also being able to trigger security incidents for its behavior in the communications, which we've dissected, and then assess that risk so that you can have a really good picture of what are the things that are not just saying, hey, I have a number of these, could be medical or printers or cameras on my network. Which ones are against the policy? Which ones are ones that are managed by us and which ones are not? So again, continuing on with knowing the behavior, which is grounded in what the device is. So some might say, oh, doesn't network analytics do this? We're complementary. Can we actually integrate with that solution so that what we're focused on is what is grounded in the advanced knowledge of what this device is? Is this particular device behaving normally for that type of device or in relation to its peers in its policy group? And understanding where anomalies occur and being able to simulate even before policy is enforced. And that takes us to that next level of the rubber hitting the road. I want to be able to understand what is safe behavior for a targeted set of devices, and then translate that into a policy that can be implemented through something like Cisco ICE, group policies for SDA or Meraki. We just talked about Cloud Fabric. A lot of those policies are built on SGT assignments. Again, you need to have the right visibility and context to drive segmentation. Without that visibility, it's like trying to build a massive Lego set blindfolded, where you don't know, what's what when you're trying to connect the dots. Order fills in that visibility. What is this device? Who owns it? What's the risk? How is it being used in my organization, so I can group things to the right SGT or adaptive policy, or the firewall group, and automate those policies, again, at switches as well as the wireless system. Now, there's a lot to it. As mentioned, I spent many years at Cisco, really helping to drive this very powerful enforcement engine through things like Cisco ICE and SDA and the Cisco Secure Firewalls. But it always started with, if you do not have the right visibility, even if a device authenticates, so the gold standard was always, hey, if you can get something to say, do 802.1x authentication, but often that's like knowing, like going into a large concert or sporting event in this massive arena and saying, yes, everyone had to have a ticket or should have had a ticket to get into the stadium, but what they should have access to. And, is this one of the performers, or is this backhand stage? Is this one of the attendees? Did they get the VIP lounge, or are they supposed to be, in the, what we call the nosebleed sections? All of that context needs to be understood to make sure that everyone is basically getting the right access to the system. And the same is true for networking. And then being understand, based on that context, how to group them. Just because you have a bunch of, and I'll pick on cameras because everybody has cameras in their organization, they could be used for many different purposes at different locations. Some cameras you might say, hey, those are no longer authorized. There's a mandate that says we need to block those, or there's a threat alert that you need to be watchful to see if they are being attacked. Whatever that might be, that context, to be able to group them, to put them into the right adaptive policy, into the right SGT or the firewall group or the NAC policy, is something that is very difficult, but Order will automate for you. And then understand, what are the safe communications? What is normal and safe behavior for those sets of devices? If I need to edit that policy, I have customers say, well, what if you're basing your, the baseline is based on things that you've seen. What if I need to have an operational governance policy that says, no, never allow RDP to these outdated Windows facility or medical or industrial devices that are running an outdated operating system. I never want to see remote control to those devices. That's more of a governance policy. Operational might be, always make sure this managed network can access the system or allow it access to a backup data center, whether you've seen that traffic or not. So you simplifies that tuning, and then simulate what happens if I put this in action. What traffic is outside safe behavior, and then leads into being able to say, how do I then, which piece of the policy should Cloud Fabric handle? Which pieces should my firewall handle? Which pieces should ICE and either DACLs or group-based policy handle? Because as you know, there's certain things that the ICE policy is extremely good at, and in some cases is the only place you can implement, say, lateral controls, but may not be the best place to implement egress, between zones or out into the internet. So we can split the policy. And then something else, which is, again, I look at all these elements that Order provides to the Cisco solution, is the ability to say, what if that perfect minimum privileged access policy is 200 or 2,000 lines long? For the engineers on watching, you're going to say, yep, there's this nasty word called TCAM, and every system has limitations in terms of how big the policy can be. Order can look at the common points in terms of where traffic is going, common subnets, common ports and protocols, and compress things down so they can now fit and be able to really achieve minimum privilege within the constraints of the target system, and then automate the entire deployment. So that's huge right there. I mean, so each one of those, and we look forward to having more detailed discussions in the future with you to kind of drill into those. But I do want to hit on some key points today. One is, how do I take that massive context? We actually collect hundreds of attributes, but how do we instill and diffuse that intelligence into something like Cisco ICE so that you can assign the right policy or the right SGT or adaptive policy? And so with order, we're going to go ahead and let me just check my next. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and jump into one of our dashboards, and fully customizable, but I'm going to go ahead and look at my asset summary. Now, first thing is we're looking at devices in multiple ways, not just which devices and where they were learned, but the users that are connected to them and how they, what applications they might be running on those systems, SaaS applications, cloud applications. So that I can really get into very specific details. And since limited time, I'm just going to pick on just to give you a sense of the type of data that we're able to collect on these systems. I'm going to grab one of these CT scanners. And what you're going to see is I showed you that like real deep detail, and we do this for every type of device, the make, model, operating system, what is the location of this device, how is it connected to my environment, who manages it, who owns that device, what's the risk associated, what would happen to risk if I was to simulate changes to, maybe patching it, segmenting it, how does that impact the risk scoring? So you're seeing we're tracking risk across multiple vectors, understanding exactly how these devices are communicating and where they're communicating to, their neighbors, what's the network neighborhood and integrations look for this device. And something else is really interesting for the healthcare organizations, because we're really dissecting that medical communications, able to go ahead and say, show me things like medical device utilization on how these devices are actually being used. Are they being utilized to their best potential? Do I have too many of a device? Are they underutilized? Are they overutilized? But you get a sense of a massive amount of context. And anytime we integrate with something, we're able to, like, whether it be ServiceNow or your asset management system, to pull in more business function intelligence into the solution. So just wanted to kind of highlight that intelligence then gets infused into ICE. So here's Cisco ICE. I have what's called context visibility, and you're seeing things that you would normally see in ICE, the MAC address and OUI in the endpoint profile. And unfortunately, especially for the agentless device, IoT and devices, you may see something like unknown. Whereas order, and I'm right now looking at facility devices, where we're saying exactly what type of device, the category, the grouping, and again, like 40 attributes that we can share to say, what is the device in its context, and be able to build policies on any one of these, including custom groupings. How is this device being used? Oh, it's power devices at this particular locations. It's a medical device that's used at this facility, that's used by the ICU team, not by the research team. An example of that might be, let me just show you some medical devices on the system. And again, you're going to see how we're providing very detailed, where the network card is some generic network card, but we're able to ferret out specifically what type, category, group, as well as things like I created a policy group that says, put all these medical devices that are running an outdated operating system into their own policy group, which could become that SGT. It can be whatever policy you want based on this rich information. So with that, just know that, whether it's the, all of the solutions, like things like Cisco Splunk and the firewalls and is that we're distilling that value into that intelligence and context into the systems. And we're also automating policy. So whether you're doing things like I just mentioned previously, SGT assignments, generating the security group ACLs and policy matrix, doing DACLs or wireless ACLs, uh, things like threat containment with ICE. These are all use cases that we can support to translate what the traditionally extremely complex, like this is just some of the things I had built from prior slides and how to build a policy, whether it be group or DACL or some other policy in ICE. We make that a click of a button to say, enforce my group policies, enforce my DACLs, assign VLANs. Anytime you see a device that matches this criteria, put it into a specific firewall group. If you see specific risk associated with that device, do some adaptive network control or rapid threat containment to contain that device on my network. Again, this is automated, and this becomes extremely powerful for those who have, struggled to really move the needle on segmentation. And something else ORDR has built, which is the ability to visualize, and this was, you see this commonly, but what you don't see is when it's all in one place to say, enforcement mode is what is the policy that I want to be in place. Visualization says, what is the actual traffic in place? Being able to say, what is my baseline in those exceptions? What is the policy? What's the impact before I go into enforcement? And just easily pivot between what is and where you want to go. And it becomes very powerful, not for visualizing, but for generating those policies. And to give you a sense of that, I'm going to go ahead and jump to another system where I have many devices, but I've put them into their own policy groups. So you can see how I split just cameras out into how they get used in my environment. And so I have cameras that are managing my parking lots. Very simple. These are going to be treated differently than maybe the cameras that are in a critical zone or watching visitor locations or whatever it might be. These are handled by a separate system. I'm already assigning them to an SGT. I can look at the communications. What are the flows? What's the intended policy? And then say, let's go ahead and generate what that policy might be. And I can do this. So for, like I said, things like wired and wired ACLs, and be able to see what would that policy be if I was to generate it. Now, if this was a very large policy, I could compress it down before sending it off to Cisco ICE or maybe to Cisco Firepower. Now, I know what the policy is going to be. I can go ahead and say, let's go ahead and enforce the policies to the switches through Cisco ICE. And when I do that, you'll see that there's the downloadable ACLs. ORDR will auto-populate those ACLs into Cisco ICE. There it is. And all the devices that are in that group automatically get that policy. By the way, if I had wanted to say, you know what, I'd rather do TrustSec enforcement, what would that look like if I was to generate a TrustSec policy? Because we can see all the peer SGTs for these things that they're talking to go ahead and provide the visibility into what would that policy, the SGACLs, as well as the matrix entries. I can assess it here before actually going ahead and enforcing that out to ICE. So here you'll see that I just enforced the policy. Now new SG security group ACLs are there. And then when I look at the TrustSec metrics, they are also auto-populated into the system based on the requirements for those targeted set of devices. So just really, again, showing the level of automation, very powerful. I'm going to, just call out, we do have a sensor that runs directly on the Cat9Ks as a Docker container to provide that extreme intelligence. We have the deep integrations with one or many Catalyst centers. We have one organization that has over 20 Catalyst Center instances across their network that we collect the data from. So we can get deep integrations with where's the device located, how is it located, what policy. And we do the same with Meraki. We also do the same with Prime, but hopefully most have migrated to Catalyst Center at this point. And then be able to ferret out. So you have a single view for all Meraki as well as any of the more traditional Catalyst enterprise network devices and connected systems. Spaces integration, amazing. So while we're already pulling the network location from all these other sources, like I mentioned, directly from the Cisco infra or from things like Meraki or Catalyst Center, being able to also infuse that into one view to say, I've got devices, I need to service them right now. Where are they located? Are they in use? So I don't want to interrupt any operations. Where's this device in a healthcare situation? Where are my infusion pumps? Where's the one I need right now? That is, again, something that we do, and it's extremely powerful.
Craig, we've got about
Gotcha,
more minutes
Steve.
if you want to jump to Order IQ.
I will. I won't demo this, but we do the same thing for Cisco firewalls. I had a customer yesterday that was focused on securing. There was a issue with Striker devices and was was statically putting them into groups for his firewall. And he said, with a couple clicks, I could have automatically had order update either the SGT and ICE, which then gets sent to the firewall system, or directly update the group. It would have been done no matter where they're located. I said, yes, huge savings in time. So with that, as mentioned, I'm gonna jump really quickly to show Order IQ. Two examples. One is, let's see if it gave me the, here, the last one I just ran. I said, generate a report on all the Cisco network devices that are end of life and provide the ROI justification for the upgrade. It went through, found all of the devices that were considered end of life, provided the ROI justification, the annual savings, the key risks, the phases of doing that rollout. So it's very powerful. This is something that came out after I think 45 seconds, putting in the query, it generated that report. Another one was this one. I just said, suggest a segmentation policy using Cisco ICE and SGTs for facility devices. It's pulling the data from the order data and then being able to analyze that to say, what would be logical ways to assign SGTs to all of your facility devices, and certainly assessing how many in each group and their risk profile to then generate what the SG ACLs and the TrustSec matrix entries would look like, and then provide additional details about, the VLAN information, the phases of doing that. But as we just saw, Order helped automate all of that process. So it's taking that intelligence and pulling it together. So go ahead there, Steve. I'll let you finish off.
Awesome. Well, and a quick note on Order IQ. So that is our agentic AI, and that was announced at the end of last year. So great functionality that allows you to make full use of our solution and certainly integrate it well with all of the Cisco platforms. So a couple of things to close off. Network refresh is something that not everybody thinks about as a security issue, but when you have older equipment on, you need to know about it. We go out and we find all the devices on the network, IT, OT, IoT, IOMT. We'll find them all. And we're able, using that agentic AI, to go out and bring in information about end of life or end of service and help make your decisions on whether or not to upgrade or what to upgrade much easier. If you're doing a network refresh, great opportunity to have something come in there that shows you everything. If you're starting to do segmentation, which I think everybody kind of has been trying to do segmentation for a long time, but if you're really getting into it now, we're going to make that so much easier. Craig mentioned that. So much easier than going in and trying to manually do it. And if you have ICE right now and want to get more out of it because you need that information from those unmanaged devices, we can help with that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jeff here shortly because he's got a couple of call to actions. I got a couple myself. So go to our website. We've got a lot of great content there on how we interact and how Order IQ works. Even if you're interested, we have Order IQ set up so you can play with it yourself in our demo system. And then your Cisco reps have access to us now. We're in the Solutions Plus program, and you can work with your Cisco rep to get this solution and to kind of enhance all the stuff that you've got. One final thing, we will be at Cisco Live. We will be in the village, the security village, and Craig will be doing another presentation talking about IoT and zero trust policy automation. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Craig. Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Steve, so much for joining us. Welcome to the Cisco, formal ecosystem partner team. Really excited to have you. We did have 2 questions in the Q&A. I wanted to give you a quick chance to answer those. This one, probably first one for Craig. Craig, in your expert opinion, what is the preferred way to get data? Is it from a container on the switch? Is it from a tap or a span port? Is it NetFlow? What's the best way to get data from the network into your platform?
Certainly. So certainly for the unmanaged and things like the OT, IoT, IoMT devices, sometimes there's no real good information that is accessible directly from just querying a database. So being able to passively look at that through something like Span or the embedded Docker container, where we can really do that application and decoding of the traffic to get those details that I was showing you. NetFlow, phenomenal, obviously in cases where you need, where it gets more into, are the devices behaving correctly? And what do I need to know about that device or set of devices to generate proper segmentation policy? NetFlow becomes your easy button for being able to distribute that across the entire organization end to end.
All right, excellent. Appreciate that. That expert advice. All right, so we're going to be kind of wrapping this up here, and so again, thank you all for joining. Really appreciate everyone for coming out today. We have about 60 people live on the line at our peak, so that's phenomenal. We are going to send a recording out to everybody that joined the WebEx today. And so you will get, the recording from this event. Also, we do post all of the Networking Insiders events to YouTube. We have our own channel now, thanks to our compadre Drew. So if you go to YouTube, go to Networking Insiders, you can find our group, and all of our monthly webinars are going to be there. And we do have some great upcoming events over the next few months. Next month, we're looking to talk about our AI Canvas and AI Assistant. We're going to do a Cisco Live US recap in June. We're going to have some awesome Wi-Fi 7 outdoor and Wi-Fi 8 announcements come July. And then we're going to be moving into the unified branch in August. Now, these are subject to change, but again, we do have some great events planned coming out, all summer long. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate, everyone for spending the hour with us. And do not hesitate to reach out to your Cisco teams, to your order teams, because we're here to help. You can't secure what you can't see. And I think with our solutions, we have a really great overall security ecosystem for your networks. Until next time, this is the Networking Insiders and the Order team. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.